Okay, it is Thursday, May 6th, 3 o'clock. This is the Public Safety Committee meeting for the Isle of Palms. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. First item on the agenda is the approval of previous meetings minutes of April 8th, 2021.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And citizens' comments. Ron, I would ask, I don't believe we have citizens' comments. Okay, we do not have citizens' comments. Moving on to old business. Old business item A, update on angled parking on the non-ocean side of Palm Boulevard between 22nd and 40th Avenue. And I believe Desiree Fragoso, our administrator, is going to.
Sure, I'd be happy to give you all an update. As you all know, the implementation of the angled parking started on May the 12th, that Monday. It was completed by about Wednesday that day. There were some housekeeping and some extra things that had to happen before the end of the week. But all in all, the implementation went out very well without major issues. DOT met with every homeowner whose mailbox had to be slightly relocated. Some adjustments were made on the field, particularly parking spaces that were too close to the fire hydrants. There were about 7 or 8 parking spaces that were eliminated because of that. All in all, I'll let Chief Corna give us an update, some of the feedback we've gotten from the beach service officers, but parking has happened in a very organized way. It's worked well. People have been receptive to it. We haven't received a ton of complaints other than, the initial shock of the bumpers. And, we have been doing a lot of educating about the need for those to ensure that the parking happens at an angle. The first couple of weekends, we have been providing some flyers to vehicles that don't pull forward, just with a picture and just asking next time, please pull forward. This will allow a wider area at the back towards the pavement for people to back into without backing into the road. We, of course, have people that back into the road just as we expected. But I have witnessed people backing out just as we had planned, just, away from the travel lane. So we can't control what individual drivers do, but all in all, I think it's been a successful implementation in first couple of weeks.
Desiree, for the chief, just one quick question, and just for the public's benefit, we will continue to pursue some improvement to the ugly bumpers. Perfect.
Yes, that's ongoing. We have reached out to the True Grid vendor, had a meeting with them, a virtual meeting with them, and I'm still waiting back about they're donating about 4 or 5 spaces worth of material for installation, and I'll be making the request of DOT to help install that section that we can try out. There are a lot of other solutions other than the True Grid, but certainly an initiative that we'll continue to pursue to have a more aesthetically pleasing solution on the land side.
Or to allow council members to point to a particular area and say, hopefully this is what it's going to look like. So focus on the future instead of those unsightly bumpers.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Chief?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
I am not a
Feel like
musician.
you're at a concert.
Do you want to, Chief, do you want to turn that off and just come use this one?
I like this one. So now I don't know why I feel like I have to stand over here.
Yeah.
It's
Seems
ingrained
right.
in my mind.
Yeah.
So we really haven't had any significant issues with the angle parking. We are monitoring it. We've had very minimal violations that we've had to cite. I actually had to go out and write a couple of myself of people that just made their own angled parking spots. And when we look at those, though, those were some that we looked at and said, well, I don't know why these weren't one, but they're not. So you can't park here. And so we've had those conversations. And I think overall it's running very smooth. The layout and the bumpers, while they're not attractive, I think they're playing a significant role in helping people to understand how to pull in. Obviously, the goal would be that as we continue to do this in the future, that we could move away from that to something that looks a little nicer. And people tend to become a creature of habit. So once they get used to parking this way, it would be easy to remove those and people would just pull in the right way from there. Do you have any questions for me specific about the way it's been going or anything?
No, not really. I mean, from my own perspective as an observation, it's the most orderly that it's been in a long time. I don't like the bumpers. I haven't had anybody tell me, boy, those look good. You know, the proof's going to be in 2 weeks, Memorial Day.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That'll be the big test for us as to how it's going to run and how well it will. The biggest concern that I want to watch with that is how well are people pulling in and they're backing out. And that'll be, I agree with you. That's our big test is that weekend.
Jimmy?
Initially, thank you, I was against the implementation solely because we didn't inform the public about what we were doing. It seemed like we kept changing our mind and this is just yet another attempt. But I have to admit that it is so much safer if you're coming out of my side street, 23rd. Before I had just a regular sedan, and you really almost had to get your bumper into traffic to see that you don't have that problem anymore. You have plenty of room to see what's coming down Palm Boulevard if we pull out. So I'm really pleased with that.
That's a good point. That's good to hear that.
Yeah.
Philip, anything? Desiree? Sure.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to add is that I have noticed an increase in litter on the landside area of Palm Boulevard. It's not new. We've always had that issue, but I've asked our public works crews to assign somebody for a couple of hours on Mondays and Fridays to assist with the cleaning efforts, just plastic bottles. We have a lot of face masks, believe it or not, but somehow they're becoming the number one littered, that we see on the beach everywhere. And also Chief Cornett and I had a conversation earlier about assigning the BSOs to have one of those pickers. I don't know if that's the word. I call them
We know
pickers.
what you mean.
It's called a pick, I don't know, hand devices to help pick up litter as they're, traveling around that area because it is unsightly. I've noticed it. The mayor noticed it the other day, and I'm not sure it's related to the angled parking, but it is something that you see when you drive, sort of around the bumper area. So we'll be addressing that, and hopefully we'll see a big improvement shortly.
Thank you. And the chief thought he was through as we moved to item B, discussion of golf cart and low-speed vehicle regulations and enforcement. You might as well get a more comfortable chair. You got a couple topics here.
Okay. It probably is easier for me to just sit here. So with the golf cart, we have gotten into our part now where we are proactively enforcing the laws. Not everybody appreciates that. We've had a couple of calls where people were very unhappy that they were stopped and told that they had to register their vehicles. Even some that got warnings and weren't issued tickets were not happy because they were told that they couldn't drive it again until it was registered with the DMV. So we are doing that. We're working on getting numbers so that we've got a better way to track how we're doing that. That's something we found when we were going through is that the tickets, they don't have a certain type of code that makes it easy to just pull from those. Reports do. We've got a special code for golf carts in our incident reports, but not so much in our tickets. So I'm not able to give you an exact number of how many tickets or warnings we've written for that so far, but I could tell you that they've stopped multiple vehicles. I know over the weekend specifically, it was about 10 or more, at least 10 that they stopped and related to violations with registration, people that were underage driving them, and those different types of violations that we've seen. So the proactive enforcement is taking place now.
I appreciate it. And I think just, Councilmember Ward knows this long predates my council tenure, but this has been subject forever. But I think the broader concern is the number of really young folks. And I think in large part, they're, people that come and visit, if there's a golf cart in the home, they don't know what the rules are. And, the more that we can educate either through social media or through the rental companies to let them know, you need a driver's license and you need insurance. And the reminder, as I did my first ride along a few years ago, those tickets are really expensive if you're not, first of all, it's impounded. You have to have insurance. I think the total tickets, Chief, help me out, but it's over $600 when you start adding all the tabs
When
on.
you add all of the tickets in there, it can get quite pricey. Each violation can be up to $232 a
Yeah.
violation.
Yeah.
That go in there. And that is something when we meet with businesses that we
Yeah.
will address golf carts with those businesses to make sure they know. I know Island Eye Realty has reached out
Yeah,
wanting to
good.
talk about some things, and that'll be one of the conversations we have with them about golf carts, and maybe it's something we can get with all of them. We'll have our livability officer go through and have that conversation again. I feel like we do that every so often, but it's never something that we should stop doing. That way
Yeah.
we can keep them educated, because golf cart laws here are different than they are in other states. And it's not necessarily fair for somebody who comes from out of state to visit, who just has one sitting there like this,
It's a golf cart.
right?
Yeah.
And they feel like it's okay to drive it. So.
No, I appreciate it. And I don't think we're just trying to be
Mr. Chairman.
wrongful. Yeah, please, Jimmy.
Thank you. I don't know what it's like today. I heard these days, but I heard people talking about the lines at DMV. But I do remember years ago when I got mine registered, and it's for every 5 years.
Yeah.
And when I went in and got registered, it was nothing. It was it didn't take hardly any time at all. And it's also curious to me how many people that I know that are down at the bars and stuff drinking say, "Oh, I'm fine." I'm on my golf cart.
There's a surprise.
And they have no idea it's illegal.
That-
You got the same DUI laws.
That's correct. And we
They
average at
don't
least
know
one or
that.
two. At least one or two a year will get a DUI on a golf cart. So you're right.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something we could come up with a way to educate, put some education down there too, so that they know before they drive.
Just a good idea. Well, I don't have anything else. I appreciate that, Philip.
No,
Okay, thank you. Moving to item C under old business, discussion of coyote management. And let me start this one off. When this was hot topic 4 years ago when I was running. We had the Coyote Coalition formed. It was sightings were a lot more common. Seemed like they may be picking up a little bit right now, but it was a very, very topical issue 4 years ago that had a fair amount of the public concerned about it. I had folks reach out to me because I was on public safety at that time. Councilmember Ward was as well. Had a lot of meetings on coyotes, and we came up with a plan that the groups all agreed to. It was put out on the city's website, and it got really, really quiet for the last year or so. And now all of a sudden, and I read the Island Eye News today and saw there was an almost two-page spread on a dog being attacked by coyotes, and the belief that they're in a breeding cycle and reemerging. The comments that were made to me were, what are we doing to continue to educate? And what is the community expectation of our animal control officers? What role do they have? And oh, by the way, you stop trapping. I'll be the first to volunteer. We did trapping for Desiree 3 years. I think 3 years. I think we caught 2. The numbers were awful. Then I had folks tell me, however, coyotes are really smart and they avoid areas where there's traps. So there's some cat and mouse, if you will, with the coyotes, where it might still be a tool towards controlling coyote populations. But I think more specifically, and I'll go back to the article, I have no idea how accurate it was today, but I never thought about it, but coyotes that are on private property, down to the high tide mark, and those marshes, I mean, copperheads, coyotes, pick your critter down there. They're loaded with critters. And, what's the role of the city? What should people be expecting? And with that, I'll defer to the chief because I know he's gotten an earful on it lately as well.
We certainly have. And I do acknowledge that we could have done a better job in the police department about public education on these things. We know at this time of year that it is typically, we're going to start seeing them more. And you are correct in the fact that the sightings have gone up. When Captain Swain goes over these stats, he would be able to tell you that there were I think it was 1 or 2 this time last year, and there were 12 in the month of April this year. So we're significantly higher than we were last year. And I'm not sure what the difference is, but I do think we could have done a better job at getting that message out. And we've met as a team to discuss how we can do that in the future. When it comes to personal property, we do not trap on personal property. We can't go on somebody else's property and put those traps out. We encourage them to call a company that is authorized through DNR to trap coyotes. And that's what happened over this past weekend. Traps were put out and 4 or 5 were captured
Really?
and dispatched. The problem is with the coyote, I don't know if it's a problem, but it's one of those things that we have to keep in mind is when you catch them, you cannot relocate them.
So I have to ask a question on trapping. That's a pretty good hit rate compared to our annual hit rate. What's different? Did we hire a better trapper?
We had a den. We had an exact
Okay.
location where we knew where they were. They had pups right there, and they're not going to leave too far from where their pups are.
Okay.
They're probably going out to get food and everything like that. And that gives the company a little bit more opportunity to get those traps closer. So they're going to be more successful. The rest of the times where we're putting them on public property, we were following trails that we saw, footprints that we saw, so that we could try to find those areas that they were traveling with the hope that we would catch them there. Unfortunately, they most often weren't making dens in the public areas. They were going to be on private property in those dunes and things like that we didn't have the ability to go into. But we do have strong partnerships with the trappers in the area, and they were able to call us the moment they had the ones this weekend and let us know really quickly so that we could make sure that we were updating that information and getting it out. And so that is one of the hard spots we have with any of those critters that are out there, is that when they're on private property, it's difficult for us to be able to go get them. We get phone calls for alligators in somebody's yard, or we get phone calls for snakes in somebody's garage or an alligator in somebody's garage. We will get them and relocate them on the island into an area where they're less likely to have impact with a person. The problem with the coyotes are we're not getting calls when they're in the garage. We're getting calls when they're in the den. And as far as the incident with the attack, what we would encourage people to do is when you have an incident involving a suspected coyote attack, to notify the police department and to get an incident report with us so that we can track it and we have a written document about it. It'll benefit you anyways if you need to go for court for whatever purposes. It just gives you a written document of what took place, and you can take it to the veterinarian's office and go from there. And it helps us too, so that we know where they're at and where the areas of concern are. And so with that, we have some signs that we've been able to put out to say, hey, be careful in this area. We know that there has been an increase in sighting for coyotes in the area. So we've got those signs. We started putting those in the beach access, and they're still out there, even though we caught the group around the den, just in case another group pops up in that area. Until we know that the sightings drop, we'll leave the signs out there just to keep people aware that there's a possibility they may be out there, and really wanting them to keep their small pets off the ground when they're on the beach access path. Don't put them down until they get out on the beach, and maybe don't let them off leash until you're out on the beach, even when it's off leash hours.
And out of the dunes, I kind of laughed with Councilman Ward. It was the monthly, how many raccoons did we catch a few years ago?
Quite a bit. We were catching raccoons and possums left and right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and just as a reminder, you mentioned it earlier, Chairman Bell, about the change in approach that the city did last year through the budget process. We eliminated funds in the budget for coyote trapping. The city continues to enforce and pursue the coyote management plan that was approved in 2018, and that focuses a lot on education. We have a dedicated webpage on the website that has a ton of resources, including contact information and guidance for property owners to hire their own trapper. But the city has, for about a year now, the city has not done any trapping on public property because of the reasons that you've mentioned before. It was very difficult, very limited, our ability to put traps out there, and it was just, it was not efficient and efficient use of resources. So I think that the work that animal control has done at encouraging and educating property owners that are having these issues among the property has been successful, as we just saw on 25th Avenue.
I just wonder, the number, Desiree, it was 12,000 a year, maybe. We had a relatively small amount of money.
Yeah, we had $15,000 a year for budgeted.
Is it worth having it there in a going forward cycle as a placeholder to be used if we need it? And I get it that, there's a school of thought that says it's not effective. There's another school of thought that says it's preventative. And I don't know the answer. I really don't. I'm not qualified. But I think it's a sum of money that is, there's no money that's irrelevant, but is it worth, as we complete the budget cycle, thinking that through? And I'm not offering that we need to pass something here, but just further discussion for ways and means. If you, because let's assume there is a problem and it is on public property and we want to deal with that problem. We don't have funding and a means to deal with that problem the way the budget's constructed right now.
We don't have any specific funds
funds.
allocated towards it, but we have miscellaneous funds that are available to the
You
city
could.
in an event. Yes, we
Okay.
would be able to find some
Yeah, I
funds
don't think it's a
to
big
do
enough
that.
number.
No.
Put a line item personally.
It was actually how I answered the resident's question, but I wanted to hear it from you.
I do want, I think there's a question, but I do want the chief after that, just to touch on some of the additional training that we have talked about for our
Okay.
animal control as it relates to wildlife.
Thank you. Tim?
I think, my opinion, I think that, on the positive side, having it as placeholder in the budget gives the citizens some comfort. So we have the line item and we're ready to go instead of, well, we might have to roll some stuff around, but we can do it. It's a small thing.
It's kind of where I was coming from.
Yeah, it's just like, we've got it, but.
But 10 or 15,000 we can find. I'm not really concerned
No.
with this being a budget item. If it's an appearance issue, then we can figure that out. but
And
it's not a big
Philip,
enough item.
with Jimmy, this was such an impassioned issue, 3-4 years ago.
You waited till people got riled up.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I mean, it was every meeting. It was, and look, there's people that are afraid of them. There's people that's not afraid of them. It was a very inflamed issue.
Yeah.
Y'all remember sitting out there. It was a big community item. Personally, I'd prefer to have a placeholder that's specific if we need it. If we don't, we don't. And just give some public assurance that we care about it.
Yeah.
Chief?
So this did get some good information going about how we train our animal control officer and what training they go through. When I first got here, the training seemed to really focus around OJT. Just what they encountered, they learned as they went. And so one of the first things we did was we set up a class here that we hosted where he actually took a certified animal control officer class. And we found more of those. The problem with those classes are they're great for domestic animals. But what our animal control spends more time with are the alligators, the snakes, and the coyotes. And so we kind of got to looking around trying to find training for that. It's not as easy as I thought it would have been. So what we're doing is we're trying to think outside the box. We're going to see if maybe we can partner with DNR to go out and spend time with them when they're doing coyote related activities, to spend some time with maybe birds of prey when they're dealing with some of those, because we do have a lot of bird calls too. And even see if maybe we could partner with the aquarium and go out there and learn about alligators and what the best way to address those are, and the marine wildlife that we deal with that washes up on the shore. We've talked with the turtle team and they've offered to come out and train our personnel on ways to respond to the different types of animals that might wash ashore anyways. And so we're going to build that in as well. And it's just, we're trying to be creative and think outside the box with some training, because there's not really an animal control officer training course for
Wildlife.
wildlife.
Now, I don't know if they still do, but DNR did offer some coyote training, pre-COVID, because I actually thought about going. It was more about hunting them than
Right.
petting them, but I'm not sure what the angle of that course, but it fills up pretty fast. But they did offer multiple times a year some coyote courses.
And we'll reach out to them. That was one of our first things with coyotes. I think they're going to be our best resource to really talk
Yeah.
with and get information with that. We've got a lot of resources in the low country that can help us to learn better ways to address the wildlife that we deal with. There's a lot of opportunities for domestic, but there are some other ways that we can think outside the box and do something different to learn and be better educated with wildlife.
Good. Thank you. Anything else, Philip, Jimmy? Okay, moving on to new business. Discussion of the beach shuttle between IOP and Mount Pleasant in consideration of requesting to CARTA that the service be free.
All right, I'm gonna let Ron give you all an update.
I'm just gonna stand over here for a second because I've been sitting down all day. So we have opened conversations with CARTA about the beach shuttle and what it's going to look like for this season. They're currently in the process of working on some marketing materials that they'll be providing to us, and we'll get that on our social media channels and our website. They did mention that they're subsidizing this program heavily, and the current cost for ridership is going to be $2 per direction. So that's roughly $4 a day.
Times the number of people you're bringing to the beach.
Correct. And now their estimates on the very high side would be about 100 people per day riding this thing. So obviously it's ridership is going to be dependent upon the time of the year. The height of the season is going to be more people riding than, on the either tail end, and then also dependent upon the weather, and just, how many people.
Well, I'll chime in. I'm sure Councilmember Ward has an opinion, but for the other bringing her 2 or 3 children over during the day, it's a pretty, we have arguments over paid parking, and then we say, well, you should take a shuttle over. I will tell you, it feels like a recipe for failure. I don't see a successful program where, you're looking at maybe $10 each way to come to the beach by the time you load up your family group. And I think we should be messaging back to them, we're trying to partner and trial a program that increases beach access and encourages people to come to the beach. But, oh, by the way, it costs more than parking in the city-owned lot or the county lot. That's not a formula that too many people want to load their beach chairs, umbrellas, and kids and get on a bus.
There are, yeah. And so I kind of jumped the gun on that and went ahead and open discussions about pricing and what we could do to kind of defray those costs. They did mention that it would be possible for CARTA to have in-route advertising. So there would be an opportunity for local businesses to maybe sponsor a weekend, because again, it's only running Saturday and Sunday and only during the season. So if somebody wanted to say sponsor, the 4th of July weekend, they'd get a lot of eyeballs on their marketing material saying like, yeah, we paid for your trip. Why don't you come hang out at our business and, and have some food or something. And then we also discussed, at peak ridership, right? So it's roughly $500 after taxes for all in, for the number of days that we're doing the program during the season. We have a rough kind of estimate of about $15,000 if the city were to be able to find enough sponsors for that or to chip towards it. We could ultimately make it free at the point of use for those individuals who would like to take the shuttle instead of come out here and park.
Councilmember Ward, I'm sure you've got some views on this
Yeah.
CARTA thing.
I think about it a lot. To me, it's like, for it to really work, in theory, it needs to be a separate, stand on its own nonprofit,
Yeah.
where it has its own funding, its own board of directors or sub board of directors or whatever, and it applies for grants and does other things to fund the service. You're right. Getting the neighbors' kids and your kids and putting them on the bus at $20 round trip, it's not going to work. Sponsorships are the way to go. The problem with the setup right now with the administration of it, to people that, let's say that you live on Rivers Avenue and you need to get to work at Northwoods Mall, You say, well, where's my free ride?
Yeah.
You know, so we are one of about 30. And
Yeah.
I'm one of about 30. It's been a minor miracle. I think it's my fourth year just to get this far. But, you know, and I tell them, and I would mention to you that it needs a lot of work for it to be funded right now, because right now it's just impractical. But that's my thoughts on it. And I think that's just down the road, and I'd be happy to work on it. To get a separate 501c3 set up and to where it's subsidized by paying CARTA to rent the buses and then find ways like Ron mentioned to subsidize the funding of it where it could be free, because a family of 5 is just not
Yeah.
going to.
So if I may, on the subject of subsidization, it's currently costing CARTA approximately $40,000 to run the shuttle. And so that pass on to the end user of $2 per ride is the share that we're talking about finding sponsorships for.
$2 per
doing something.
person per ride.
Correct.
But at some age, they're free, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's under 6, I believe.
Yeah, I mean,
It's gonna be some
I think
large.
it is too.
It's under 12.
It's free. I think that, you know, the sponsorship idea is very appealing. Because at the end of the day, you're looking at $1,000 for a weekend to sponsor 100 riders each day. Assuming peak ridership, I'm sure that, you know, businesses, our Front Beach businesses would, maybe embrace that, because you can, you know,
Well,
The ones I've talked to, a couple of them, yes, a couple of them, absolutely not.
but it's, you know, I like to start at the top of the problem. And the problem is too many people wanting to come to the beach and looking for parking places, right? So we've had this discussion around CARTA. When the thunderstorm breaks out, what do? I've got my kids, my family waiting on a bus to come. So there's all kinds of inherent problems. I would love to see our neighboring communities participating with CARTA. You know, they're the ones screaming at us for access. This is an access methodology, and to have a cooperation with our city government and with theirs. How do you make this viable for CARTA? You know, to believe that Mount Pleasant couldn't participate with CARTA in providing a shuttle service to Isle of Palms blows my mind. To me, they should be all over this. They should be working with our city administration and working with our council if need be, as a very viable means of getting people to the beach that remains open and welcoming in a way that works for everybody. So I don't know if anyone's reached out to the neighboring communities, but it's not that expensive. And it's funny, we're talking about small line items for coyote management. We're talking about similar amounts of money from big communities to provide a service to the public that could work implemented correctly. But you know, that family, I will tell you, I haven't run marketing organizations. I'm not looking to spend money on a CARTA bus for a family to come to the beach is the way I'm spending my marketing dollars today. That's maybe, you know, a Band-Aid on the wound. The real issue is community participation from those communities that want to provide for the residents to come to the beach. So I don't know, Jimmy, if it's ever been talked about, but
Good point.
Yeah.
Randy, for example, a community could sponsor a bus stop,
sure.
a covered bus stop. And they're solar powered and everything.
Yeah.
But that's a very good point to get them to help us with this.
And that's certainly a route worth exploring, pardon the pun.
No, I mean, I just, what I don't want to see happen is the program gets killed because it never had a chance to survive.
Yeah, and certainly we
And
want to do.
that right now is what it feels like to me, right? We'll go back, we'll look at the numbers, go, well, that didn't work. Well, you know, didn't expect it to work.
We have to give it a fair shot, right? And do what we can to make that happen.
Philip?
Well, but I think, Randy, a lot of that collaboration probably should have happened before now, but I think that's exactly the answer. I don't think this is an IOP subsidized issue. If local businesses want to do something, you know, if we had handed out coupons in exchange for maybe umbrella rental or a restaurant token or something. I mean, if there was some enticement to get them to spend some money while they're here, that would be great. But I think this is a broader collaboration effort with other communities, to your point, Randy.
I don't have anything else.
Fair enough. Neither do I.
Everybody? Okay. Thank you, Ron. New business item B, consideration of the purchase of a 2021 Ford Ranger in the amount not to exceed $35,000 to state contract price, base price $22,253 for the fire inspector FY21 budget, capital projects, fire department, capital outlay.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
There we go. That was easy.
Yeah. I don't think we need a lot of conversation there. Item C, consideration of the request from the IOP Beach Chair Company for approval to drive a motorized ATV on the beach for loading and unloading of beach rental equipment. And I know Katrina Limbaugh would like to address the council. We agreed not to do it through citizens' comments since it was a new business item.
Thank you. May I remove and talk? Oh,
Please be comfortable.
I really need to breathe. Okay. Would you like me to just give you an overview of our request
Yeah, I
Sure.
think
Okay.
for the
for the
public
record and
it's
for the
good,
public
yes.
record? Okay. So we are we're requesting that we have access for in Wild Dunes from Owner's Beach House north to Ocean Club, just on the track or the trash truck line, only running parallel with the shoreline from 8 a.m. I'm sorry, before 9 a.m. and after 6 p.m. to drop loaded carts of chairs and umbrellas on those on the trash truck line to help us with our operations. Right now, we're having a lot of trouble accessing the beach and Wild Dunes. We're trying to eliminate our carbon footprint and eliminate trucks running in and out of Wild Dunes, loading and unloading. We met with the CEO of the Wild Dunes Community Association, David Kanowski, and he actually recommended that this might be something worth pursuing last year when we were, among all the COVID struggles. And we are just to a point that we have so much demand with this year with renting our beach chairs and umbrellas in that community. The walk down to the beach and Wild Dunes, I'm sure everybody knows that the beautiful nourishment is extremely long. We know that our service is essential in Wild Dunes and the rest of the island. If not for our rental service, we can imagine how many single-use umbrellas and chairs Donnie would be picking up in his pickup truck every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So if you want me to go into the details of our proposal, I can. I know that I've emailed everybody the majority of that. It will eliminate the impact of our multiple trucks in the community. It's much more efficient in us providing the service quickly to the community. We'll be able to get everything off the beach before dark in a very efficient manner, which is obviously our number one priority when we're getting off, besides safety. And it's also safer for our staff right now. Right now, they're walking nearly a mile with a massive cart of beach chairs, lugging hundreds of chairs from Owner's Beach House all the way to Ocean Club. We are in the works of getting within all these regimes so that we're able to work more efficiently out of the regimes as well. I just want to real quickly touch on what our regulations would be. The vehicle would be an ATV that would be similar to what they use with beach services. We'd have a governor on it and it would not be allowed to go faster than 5 miles an hour, but I actually think it's going to be 4. I just need clarity on that. So it would be no faster than walking speed. We're only looking to run this from April 15th through September 30th. Again, the hours before 9 a.m. and after 6 p.m. And we'd have a small list of drivers who are a manager position or higher, who we'd request to meet with the PSO prior to launch, just so that everybody's on the same page of all the rules. You go one straight line, you make 3 drops, you come back and you're done. So that, I think, concludes all the details that I have prepared.
So just for clarity, Katrina has met with each of us individually, no FOIA violations to explain. I think we've all shared, probably individual views on it. I had stated that, the concerns I always have on these are the slippery slopes that we get on, where's existing city code? What does it mean to any other business? And are we, heading down a path of doing something that has unintended consequence, right? And I have all the empathy in the world for their business. I think they run a great business. I still believe at the height of this issue, it's a regime issue within Wild Dunes where there should be provision for those owning rental properties and owning homes to be able to store chairs and things there. Now, I did ask the question, even though it's small market share, they do have competitors on the island. When that competitor comes back and says, well, I'd like the same thing. I want access to the same beaches for the same reasons, you know, that we act as a body and behave consistently. So, and I get the problem. I mean, I understand it completely. The question I have of Desiree is, you know, what does our current code tell us? So, you know, as a code issue, not as a definitive answer issue, where are we with city code in being able to operate an ATV on the beach? And I don't worry at all about responsible behavior, but we all know that behavior is not exactly what we want it to be sometimes, even with employees. So, you know, what's the city's liability? Should there be, and my initial thought was this should be resolved within Wild Dunes and Dave Konoski as an agreement between them with indemnification back to the city, and just say, look, it's a Wild Dunes service. It's essential for the operation of businesses there. And, you know, should we be looking at, and God, Desiree, I hate to bring it up, but when we went through the surfing thing down there, we went through a lot of the same conversations about what about a surf company operating down there? Who's the responsible party? Who can do this? What's indemnification look like? It just feels like a rehash of, are we solving a Wild Dunes community issue by allowing something that is not 100% compliant with our code, or do we need a code change?
Well,
Yeah.
I'll answer the question about the code.
Oh, you have the working microphone. Katrina, if you need to sit, please sit. Yeah.
So the city code prohibits any vehicle from being on the beach with the several exceptions. So anything that's public safety or public health related, emergency vehicles are allowed to be on the beach. And then the code also provides some type of flexibility for city council to approve the use of a particular vehicle. So this request, you know, if it's approved by city council, would fall under those exemptions. So there is an avenue for city council without needing to change the code to consider this request and approve it. The same concerns that you had expressed, I expressed to Katrina. You know, some of the challenges with this request for the city would be, how do we address similar requests in the future? This is within Wild Dunes. However, we consider all 7 miles of beach to be public beach, and they are bound by the same regulations. So even though this request is very specific to that area that they're serving, it would require city council to approve it to be allowed. In terms of liability, again, this is the first time we deal with this type of request. So, you know, whether the city attorney recommends that we have a hold harmless or some type of liability waiver, that's certainly a possibility. You know, from a public safety perspective, Chief Cornett has also had a conversation with them and with me about any particular concern. Accidents can happen any day, you know, at any time, but you know, at the speed that this vehicle would be driving at the times of day, we don't anticipate it being a big issue. The bigger issue is broader, is what do we do with, you know, other businesses, similar businesses that come to the city with a similar request, and that would be up to city council to address.
And Katrina, not to put words in your mouth, but because the long-term answer is to get your product scattered out across all these HOAs within the condos. That's your long-term. I don't want to call this, yeah.
Currently, we're working with every regime in Wild Dunes that is beachfront. And, you know, things take time, as we all know. One particular one I've been working on for 9 months now, and I still have yet to get this person on the phone. I mean, we are trying effortlessly. We have put a lot of
Put a lot of
effort.
effort into it.
It's up to something with that.
Yeah,
But
and
we've been putting in all our blood, sweat and tears and getting in these regimes because the long-term goal for us is to work out of each regime that makes the most sense. If you look at the precedent set across the Southeast, down in Florida, up in Georgia, I mean, if you go to any beach community, you're seeing beach chairs and umbrellas that are for rent, and typically they're done by stands. There's a box on the beach that keeps everything, or at the very least, they have a franchise agreement with the city, which I am 100% supportive of, and I believe that that's the direction we should go. The service is being offered already. It has been for over 25 years now. And if we were more efficient and we were also able to offer a franchise fee to the city, I think it's going to be a win-win for
Separate topic.
everybody. Separate topic,
Yeah.
yes, but
So a question, and, because I always put my Dilbert hat on when I think these things through, and I'll apologize for shifting to Dilbert mode. If I'm those regimes and you have an ATV and service is working fine, I don't have a problem. Right? I'm not incented to make that long-term a near-term. However, if the majority or a significant portion of my regime has rental properties and has an expectation for chair delivery, and I don't help rapidly solve that problem, I've got a problem, right? So I don't know that we're incenting the right behavior by having an ATV. I mean, I can't imagine, and you've made me aware of the one situation where, it's not a majority decision of the regime. It's personal choice by owners. It just seems to me that there is maybe an unintended consequence of not, and I don't know what we or Dave Kanoski can do to help the regimes make these decisions faster, but I know Desiree's
time is of
shuddering
the
on that.
essence for us, and
And-
we
and
are
Katrina, I know
going
you're
as
working
fast
hard
as
on
we
it. I
can.
really
I
do.
mean, this is what I sleepless nights and I'm on emails and
Yeah.
phone calls all day. It's up to the board members. It's not up to the property manager. Some boards are
Yeah.
made up of full-time homeowners, and there's 3 of them.
Yeah.
Some are made up of a bunch of
Yeah.
rentals, so they're good with it. But it solves an issue that I think is community-wide. Wild Dunes is Isle of Palms. We're all one island. And this is an essential service. And I do believe that if we're unable to service these communities, I do believe that it's going to have unintended negative consequences
with
on
you.
our environment. I really wholeheartedly believe that.
But there's an immediacy of problem that we're trying to help you solve, which is, as you stated to me and hopefully to the other council members individually, is we can't deliver chairs to people visiting the island if we don't do something.
Correct.
Right. So, I had conversation with Desiree on this. I think, we do need a legal opinion. I think it's something we need to act on fairly quickly. But it also needs to be in front of the balance of council, because I think there's consequence that everybody on council needs an opportunity to think through. If we do this, are we doing something? And by the way, I fully appreciate franchise. We'll have that on a different day, a different conversation. Right now, it's, what do I do as a business to service customers? Desiree? Or Jimmy or Philip?
Yeah, there are a couple
Yeah.
of questions. As far as procedure, what do we need to do? Katrina, we need to explore legal, number one, right?
I think that the liability question would authorizing this present any liability to the
I'm
city?
in favor of that, and I'm also in favor of what Randy mentioned about bringing full council, and that's a long way away. That's the 25th, I believe. And today's only the 6th. I know time is of the essence.
And that's
I
right in
wish
front
I
of
could
Memorial
do
Day.
Something more for you, Katrina, but that would be my recommendation. Let's move forward to council and not take any action here.
I believe, I think it's a bigger issue than it seems. It's a huge issue for you, but I think it's a very far-reaching decision. I think frankly, Katrina, it leads into, and I do think it's a discussion we need to have as a full council around franchises and what we do, right? But this is sort of the forefront of that. But I don't think the 3 of us are empowered to say it's just okay to do that. I think, it needs legal oversight and full thought from administration and city legal counsel.
I would recommend that you make a motion if if you don't want to recommend it, but make a motion to bring it before city council, just so that we can procedurally add it to the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
And then the other thing, oh,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that her request is very specific to a time of the year. One option to the city is to try it out, just like we're doing with surfing as a pilot program and monitor it and evaluate how it's working. That's just an option that would be
But that's-
available.
That's still the full council thing.
Correct.
I will ask a question before we
Randy, can I,
vote. Oh,
can I
I'm sorry,
let me
Phil.
say something real quick? Because I think, Katrina, the unintended consequences and rewarding the behavior, I think it is a trial basis and let's just see how it works. You're not looking for us to make a decision today. You're just really trying to get in front of Memorial Day to a large extent. So I don't think we're under any time pressure to make a
That's-
decision. And full council's fine, in 2 weeks, in my opinion.
That is the question, though, Philip. That is Memorial Day weekend.
No, Memorial Day weekend
mean,
would be the
just like-
following after city council.
Yeah. Let's assume this passes council.
They'll be able to operate in
That's what I'm
Memorial
asking.
Day.
Thank you. That's all I
That's my
wanted.
point. Yeah, we got plenty of time and Katrina's just kind of like working with the regimes, just trying to get the ball rolling and make things happen. So, I mean, I've had a number of conversations with David Kanowski as well. And, I think putting my Wild Dunes hat on for a second, that, we need to do a better job of holding some people accountable in the regime world personally to make this happen. Because that's where your
That's right.
rentals volume is, and that's not news to anybody. But, I just think there needs to be a good partnership there, probably. So I think we take it to full council as a trial basis for this year, see how it works, take care of whatever legal issues we need to, and then we can set the stage for a broader franchise conversation as well.
Keep those separate.
I think y'all need a vote.
Okay, we need a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Go back to my lovely list here and find out. There's a lot of writing here. Item D, consideration of law enforcement assistance and support agreement with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office.
I will let Chief Cornett give you an update. This is an agreement that's been in place for many years. So we're updating it. But I've also asked Chief Cornett to give you all an update on our efforts to have a stronger partnership with Charleston County as it relates to their Marine unit. So Chief?
Great.
So what you have in front of you is the standard mutual aid agreement. The last one we signed was in 2019 when Sheriff Cannon was still in. We have to sign a new one because Sheriff Graziano took office in January. So this one is specific to that. In the future, I'll be coming to you with an agreement specific to operating as part of a Marine unit with the Metro Marine for Charleston County area. And with that, the agreement, it sounds like, is going to be that Charleston County Sheriff's Office takes a boat that they have and puts it in our care. And we would be able to utilize that boat for enforcement efforts on the Intercoastal Way. And we would be able to assist the Sheriff's Department by responding to calls that come out for Dewey's Island or Goat Island, which sometimes can be difficult for them because it may take them quite a long time to get over here. And with the no wake zone coming in and going further, it even hampers that further and makes it a little bit longer. So this gives us the ability to help them by having a resource close that would be covered under that agreement. And it gives us the ability to work on those enforcements of the no wake zone that has just been extended, as well as boating under the influence in those other water areas or rescue areas in the intercoastal and right there around the island.
And Chief, this is an in-water boat per, we have that right under the terms of the marina lease. So the intent would be to keep it in water.
Correct. Well, we're still working on that. A lot of things will be worked out with the agreement that they signed to us, and that would include like insurance and maintenance and things like that, how they want us to store it if they have a specific way, because it will be their boat. It will just be marked as a law enforcement. But again, that'll be an agreement that I bring to you in the future. I believe it'll be in the near future because they're taking the boat now and marking it. They just put new motors on it, so they are ready to move forward with this, and it'll be a great partnership. But what you have in front of you today specifically is just a standard mutual aid agreement.
And Chief and I had discussion offline about specific to training certain personnel within the police department. This is not a lack of training for individuals to be able, for anyone in the police department just to use that Marine unit.
Correct. And the sheriff actually is covering the cost for those 3 officers within our department to go through, which is several $1,000s. She's putting them through 2 courses so that they can operate the boat. And that would be part of the agreement, is that they have to have those courses to operate the sheriff's boat, which makes perfect sense to me.
You need a motion or anything?
We would need a motion for the mutual aid agreement in front of you today to move forward to full
Motion to
council.
approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Chief.
Anything else on that topic? Desiree, Chief?
No, I'm just very, very proud of the work that our
Oh,
police
that's
department is
great.
doing and furthering these partnerships. And I think it's a huge benefit. It'll be a huge benefit for our community to have our department trained and able to respond to those type of calls. It's something that we've been talking about for a while, and it's exciting to see it come through.
Great job.
Good work, Chief.
Okay, a really small topic coming up, discussion of the city's position on State Bill S40. And if I may, I'll start the conversation. There's the reality, there's what's on social media, there's what the city's real position, council members' positions. S40 doesn't come without controversy, obviously. I've had the opportunity with Desiree to meet with Secretary Hall, I think a combined about 7 hours, a lot, and she's been most gracious in accommodating us in the discussions. That should not be interpreted as agreement with her that I personally or others think that S40 is good for the community. Personally, I've been pretty vocal that I think it's unnecessary legislation that targets the Isle of Palms, and had an expectation that we work through the angled parking, we keep parking free at this point in time, that we collaborate and try to resolve a problem, which is to provide beach access, all recognizing that there's not a member sitting up here that went through over 30 COVID meetings that doesn't look back and go, what could we have done better? Many things. But as a consequence, we've been vilified for shutting down and trying to protect the public, which we thought was best for everybody, and that includes the surrounding communities. So instead, we find us sitting here with a bill targeted at the barrier islands that has now been stripped of language that says barrier island. But the reality is, it only applies to the 4 barrier islands, right? Horry County, Myrtle Beach, they've got their paid parking, they've got their control over their roads. I don't see where it affects them at all. It has tremendous impact on us if we cede control. And I say cede control, I don't know if it's really ceding control, but allow for a state agency to have a better view of what's in the public interest and public safety here on the Isle of Palms. It just gives me heartburn. So we've had a lot of residents, Jimmy, I don't want to speak for you or Philip, they're probably all coming to us individually, go, what do you think? I've had a lot of hair on fire conversations with residents. I don't think we need to have our hair on fire. S40 hasn't passed. It may not, it may get tabled. It may pass. And even if it passes, unless there's something that comes our way as a community that says S40 is going to, we're going to make a change based on S40. S40 is kind of, it's kind of static, even if it passes, until someone says, I'm going to take away your 2015 parking plan, or we make a request of the state that's denied in our parking plans, right? So it, in and of itself, probably doesn't do anything, but I will tell you, it's got the community up in arms, probably more organized than it's been since the connector. Right. And I think it's something that we need to, in my perspective, we need to publicly state what this council's position is on S40. And I've spoken to Desiree right before this meeting and many times leading up to this meeting. I do think this council should pass a resolution that says we are not in favor of S40, that we believe it's a gross overreach and breach of home rule. And I don't know how anyone in Columbia knows better than our public safety officers and this city council of what's in the public interest here. We went through this with the connector. And every time I drive across it, I roll my eyes and going, wow, that was brilliant. It just feels like pure play politics, and I just lay it out there. I don't see where it benefits anybody. We have cooperated with the agencies. Desiree's done a phenomenal job of working with SCDOT. And I think we're now at a point to just see whether it passes or not. And, what's the position of council? Surrounding communities think is great. Yeah, there's more votes there. So. Philip,
I was
Jimmy?
wondering if there was a possibility of meeting with the other three communities and passing a joint resolution.
The other three being the barrier islands.
Yes, sir.
Well, I would certainly support it. I know our mayor has had lots of conversations with the mayors, but I can't imagine, if anyone believes that S40 is only targeting Isle of Palms, I mean, every legislative session, we seem to be, pardon the sad humor, but if anyone followed Gary Larson, the deer with the bummer of a birthmark, we feel like that deer with the target on it right now. Isle of Palms, you're awful. And yet we still have free parking. As a city, we had the foresight years ago, not me on council, to buy parking lots that afford 700 parking places. The county still charges for parking, and we have all free parking on Palm Boulevard. But we're trying to deny people beach access. That is the most ludicrous political argument I think I've heard in a long time. And I think that the beach community should band together. And Councilman Ward, I don't know if that's a possibility, but I certainly would like to see us coming out of this make a strong statement that we do not believe that it's within SCDOT's purview to tell us that they know better than we do what the safety of this community is.
Does anybody know when the last day of the legislature is in session?
13th,
Next
of-
week,
of
Wednesday.
May,
May?
they got 2 days left.
Yeah.
Very rarely, I mean, I don't follow it. Everything, but I follow it, stuff that I'm interested in. There's something gets in the first year.
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't say that, but it takes a lot of work to get something through them.
Yeah.
Especially the first year, and that's hoping against hope. But I certainly agree with your comments, and I just don't know why we haven't passed a resolution before now,
So, man, what's your, I'm
If the
sorry,
mayor
Jimmy.
reach out to other communities, if they don't, we can independently, because they seem like they are really pointing the cannon at us right
They
now.
are.
So what's your timing on wanting to have something done?
Well,
Because
I
again,
thi-
this could get punted to next year's
Well,
legislative agenda.
I think for this committee that we just make a motion to move it to full discussion for council to pass a resolution.
So moved.
But I don't think you can, the way the agenda's worded, can you?
Whoa.
Don't yell about it.
It's not worded for action. However, FOIA would allow you all to make a motion with a 2/3 to amend the language. And because it won't be the last time that you vote on this item, there's a little bit more leeway. I think that the conversation could be assign staff to work with the city attorney in drafting a resolution to bring before city council. I get the sense that there's a lot of consensus. You
Pretty
can make
sure
a
there's
motion.
2/3 there.
Make a motion, and then we'll get to work and present something on the 25th to city council for action.
But that's exactly what I meant.
And
I
that's
kn- I knew
exactly
it.
what I'm seconding.
Are we voting or are we just suggesting?
Well, we have,
You have
yeah,
to vote to
we
change
have to
it.
vote to change and make it actionable. So
Correct.
based on Desiree's language, which will be interpreted
Mhm.
very accurately by Nicole later without me trying to reiterate that.
asking, I'm trying
Yeah.
to figure out, are we making something?
So we're looking,
So I think they want to make a motion to amend the agenda to allow for a consideration of an action on State Bill S40. And that needs to go through a 2/3 vote.
That's being motioned by Councilmember Ward and seconded by Councilmember Pound. Okay, and you're voting on that now.
yes, all in favor? Aye.
All in favor, okay?
And now you'll be voting on a motion to assign staff and city attorney to draft a resolution.
Correct.
in opposition us to S40 or to S40.
In opposition
Of,
to S40. Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
all right.
And I think we'll have a lot more conversation on this, knowing what happens with the legislative session and in front of our next council
Before our
meeting.
council meeting.
Okay. F, discussion of preparations for Memorial Day weekend.
I think that'll be me.
You
So
really got the stage today.
we have tried to get in front of this as much as possible to be proactive in our planning. And the command staff from both police and fire, that's both deputy chiefs and the captain and the lieutenant from the police side have all got together, started working on plans to go ahead and get started. The IAP is being initiated now. We do know that we'll be bringing in extra personnel, Charleston County deputies. We're going to reach out to Highway Patrol to see if maybe they can even assist with the connector. And we're also, I know one of the things we plan to do would be to do a traffic safety checkpoint because of all the traffic coming on the island. It'll be later in the evening that we'll be doing that, but we do plan to do that. We do plan to ask for assistance from our neighboring agencies. We've already started having conversations with Mount Pleasant Police Department. They've been great in assisting us with the lights when they can, but they do have impacts when they stop the light because it backs traffic up on their secondary streets. So they're going to work with us. They have been doing that. Captain Swain has continued to be our contact for Captain Carter over there. And we know we'll have extra personnel that'll be here. And that's kind of where we're at now. The IEP should be done I'm hoping to see the rough draft by this week or early next week. And then we'll tweak it up a little bit and have the final draft well before the event.
Just one thing I wanted to add, we're almost fully staffed on our beach service officers. We're still going through applications, so this might be the first year in a while that we have the 10 that we always plan for. Obviously, their focus is on parking enforcement. We think that obviously angled parking has facilitated the enforcement for our guys and girls in the police department. So we think that we're going to have a successful Memorial Day weekend, but it will be busy. I think that everybody knows that. There will be traffic. There's going to be a lot of people here that weekend if the weather's really nice. So we appreciate everybody's patience with our staff that are going to be working really hard and long hours that weekend. We are and will be as prepared as we can be. And it's certainly a proactive effort with our neighbors, but it's going to be an intense weekend. We saw spring break and there's a lot of pent up demand, a lot of vehicular traffic. So just we appreciate in advance our community's patience and support through that weekend.
We know, yeah. And thanks for the preparation. I think, we have confidence in you, but we also know if the weather's good, we're going to get full of people. Okay, item G, discussion of the noise ordinance as it relates to amplified music at different times of the day. And the mayor asked that I add this in particular because there were some requests from Front Beach as it related to the particular zoning there and the way that we treat the noise ordinances across the community. And I had a conversation with Desiree this morning, and she's probably got code in front of her, so I'm going to let her walk us through what I think we're intending to do here, and then we can have some discussion around it.
Well, I'll speak to what the city's noise ordinance states today. I think there's always some confusion about is it at night or during the day. The code actually includes restrictions on amplified music for basically 24 hours. At the end of the day, whenever a complaint is made and an officer responds to that, there is a big emphasis on the officer's subjectivity and their officer's discretion to evaluate whether a complaint is founded or unfounded. The noise ordinance, certainly predates me, predates some of you on council, and some of the issues that the city was trying to resolve at that time. But I have received some complaints from our stakeholders, particularly in Front Beach, that say it's just so vague. It basically prohibits amplified music 24 hours a day if it is determined to be at night, if it's determined to be plainly audible in any adjacent street or right of way or place of dwelling. And then during the night, in any way that disturbs the quiet, comfort, or repose of any reasonable person of ordinary sensibilities. So it's just very vague. And so I'll let Chief Cornett speak to, from an enforcement perspective, what the expectation is for those people who call in for a noise complaint.
Let's go back a little bit before he answers. Because this, I think this is very relevant, and Jimmy, you and I have been through this multiple times on the noise ordinance, but you look at the marina, it's GC1, right? So it's clearly expected to conform to the surrounding neighborhoods. We had, just prior to my council arrival, we had a lot of conversation around Morgan Creek Grill and the band show and the decibel levels and all that, and it's GC1. Front Beach is GC3. Front Beach, Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong, 49 years of the Windjammer operating, providing live music as a recognized national and international venue. There's probably a reasonable expectation of continuing their business as it's been without worrying about, well, somebody called in and had a founded complaint because they can hear music, right? I kind of think anyone around there sort of knows that's what it is. So you're putting our officers in a very subjective position for something that's not really a subjective activity. So Chief's nodding. Conversation I had with Desiree is if we need to clean the code up and be clear so that we don't have an officer going in because they received a noise complaint from loud music from the Windjammer continuing to operate as they have for the last 49 years, then there's probably some code change in there somewhere that's warranted and worth, pushing it back to administration, saying, come back to us with what we think that recommended code is. I think the difficulties in the noise ordinance, and Jimmy, we amended that 3 years ago where we conformed to the same code that Wild Dunes had, and we did some things around construction noise.
Randy,
Yeah.
put this in your comments if you don't mind. Don't
Yeah.
interrupt.
No, please do. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Didn't we set up parameters with decibels and everything?
We did for Morgan Creek, absolutely did.
Without just a trial basis?
But it's also agreed in the going forward families group lease to conform to certain decibel, it's not specific to decibel levels, but
Or not, or is that it?
well, I mean, that one's so low, the Windjammer would not be operating at that decibel level. I can assure you, because I used to hear the music at my house and it got down to the level of Peter, Paul, and Mary,
Yeah.
for those old enough to know what I'm talking about.
So what we had with Morgan Creek Grill was a noise control agreement. The ordinance, the noise ordinance, section 925 did include, it includes a prohibition on any loudspeakers, with the exception of those properties that are city-owned and have a lease with the city and a noise control agreement. So the noise control agreement pretty much governs how the city responds to noise complaints from city-owned property, but it does not include any limits on decibels. And we're going through
But
that
there
right
there
now.
were, I mean, Jay Clark measured the decibel levels. There was a lot of back and forth conversation, but I think the point I'm trying to make is that's GC1. This is
Right,
GC3.
right.
And I think, if I look at, we've all seen plenty of reasonable and unreasonable noise complaints, right? Some are the kids in the pool behind my house are screaming too loud and I don't like it, right? Well, the way our code's written is very subjective, or they're playing a radio and there's noise levels, but by the way, that's what kids do. What we're talking about here is, can a business continue to operate? And is there something in our code that could be more specific as to what's allowed and under what times of day than what we have in the current code? And I just recommend, and I don't know what action we need, is that we push it back to administration, have them come back to us with something that makes sense, that helps the chief out and our public safety officers. Fair enough?
Yeah, quite a quandary. That's been going on forever.
Yeah.
I remember, if y'all
Yeah.
will, put up with me for a second. Carmen Bunch had a problem with the bands at the Windjammer. And one night, they did a raid, and Carmen went up, she was leading the way, and she had on her miner's helmet with a light on it. And, went in there with just about the entire police force. But they forgot to check the schedule and the band was on break.
Don't do that, chief.
You know,
Okay,
But it goes, it goes
No,
all the way
it's
back to then.
so moving on to highlights of departmental reports, fire department, Deputy Chief Smith. And we'll pass around the working microphone.
While he's coming, I do want to recognize real quick, because I think it came out yesterday, the fire department, you'll see it in next month's report, but I have to tell you now, has been awarded the 2020 Fire Safe Community Award. It is the first time Isle of Palms Fire Department has gotten that award, and only 80 fire departments in the state got it. So that's a
Fantastic.
significant thing, and it was last year, so nothing I did at all. It's all the awesome work that our men and women of the fire department did.
And Jason, I don't know, for the other council members, how much detail. I did go through the reports in total and compliment the fire department. I love the formatting that's in the reports now with the analytics and all that. And I think one thing for the community at large, when we look at public safety, they have no idea how many calls or what goes on in public safety. And these reports are easy to read, very analytical, very graphical, and I just encourage anyone paying attention to this meeting to take the opportunity to look at the reports and understand what's there, because it represents a lot of work, not just in putting charts together, but on behalf of public safety people putting the work in to do those calls.
Thank you very much. Deputy Chief Hathaway has done an amazing job with these reports and cleaned them up a lot. So it's very appealing to the eye. So,
Yeah.
All right, we'll get right into the report. You'll see at the first page, page 1, you'll see a significant uptick in calls for April. We're up 120%. There were 1 fire call, 50 EMS calls, 7 rescue calls, 5 hazmat calls, 1 service call, and 33 classified as other. And so you can see that, people are definitely starting to travel more. Our call volume is starting to tick up more than what it was last year for sure. So as we move to page 2, we'll hit a couple of the notable calls. Actually, before that, we started doing all of our water rescue training. We knocked that out last month as well. And we also did nighttime and daytime boat training as well. So you'll see here on the 3rd, Deputy Chief Hathaway and Fire Marshal Stafford participated in the Easter egg drop, at the rec department. And Sparky the fire dog and McGruff the crime dog were there as well. And that also speaks to the Isle of Palms Fire Department. I was going to talk about this, but thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. They received the 2020 Fire Safe South Carolina Community Award. It's a significant accomplishment for the fire department. Only 80 fire departments, as Chief said earlier, got this award, and it's the first time that we had received it. So this award recognizes departments that reduce fire-related injuries and decrease risk for residents and firefighters. They also recognize the community relations aspect of fire safety messaging as well. So that is a big deal, and our fire marshal has done an amazing job leading the way on that. So, all right. Seagrass Lane, we had a propane leak that was hit by a contractor. We went and secured that leak and taped it off, and they were able to secure that later. On the 21st, Morgan Cove, we had a dumpster fire. Some people disposed some debris in a manner that was not safe. Common fire, fire crews arrived and extinguished it pretty quickly. On the 27th, we had a report of a boat taking on water. Thankfully, that call was canceled and they were just waiting on CETO. So as y'all are all aware, as long with everyone else in the low country, on the 30th, we had a relatively large fuel spill here on the island. I got to see Chief Cornett very early in the morning before he actually did his hair. So they were dropping off the fuel at the gas station, and there was a mechanical issue there that we believe at this time that transpired, and approximately 2,100 gallons of fuel, that's the estimate that was given, spilled. We would like to thank all of the local agencies that came out. Police Department helped, Isle of Palms Police, Mount Pleasant Police, Mount Pleasant Fire Department, United States Coast Guard, Water Department. We had a lot of other agencies that came in and helped us a lot with trying to protect against the environmental impacts and try and mitigate the damage of the spill. So I'd like to thank a lot of those local agencies that came out and really truly helped us a lot.
I'd just like to note Desiree called me at 10 minutes till 7 and she was basically here at 7 o'clock also.
Yeah, I do think she did her hair.
Yeah.
All right, on to the next page, page 4. If you look and see, we talked about this with the fuel spill. The hazmat calls, if you'll notice, they're up a little bit, but I just think that's an anomaly. Those will start to balance back out. Fire calls are down. Once again, I think that's an anomaly as well. Those will start to balance back out as well. So that's really the only notable points on page 4. And then once again, page 5, we've got the call volume has definitely gone up with the increase of tourism and people starting to come back out. All of those numbers are in line with the resident, non-resident. Just there's more of them right now at this point. So everything's tracking historically. We're going to skip page 6 unless you have any questions in regards to that. The only other anomaly right there on 6 is we're starting to get a larger call volume on Mondays, which there really isn't
People are staying longer.
a good justification for that. And we're dropping on Sundays. Maybe they're taking it for a day of rest. So, all right, let's skip to paid, if it's okay with y'all. All of our run times are averaging about the same that we normally do. One thing that I do want to point out is page 11 and on. Once again, Deputy Chief Hathaway has done a really good job of incorporating a lot of various graphs and charts in the monthly report. If you will see page 11, this is a heat map of where the calls are generating. And as you can tell with this graphic, we're getting a lot down in the Front Beach area right now, which is pretty typical with what you would expect this time of year and moving on for the next couple months. So that's something that he's incorporated that really helps us be able to look and see exactly where our resources would be utilized best. Yes, sir.
Hey, Jason, can I ask a question real quick? And to Chair Bell's comment, greatly improved package. Thank you guys for doing. I know it takes time to do that, but the problem with it is you put these kind of graphs in front of us and I'd like to see it this way. So your response.
I will pass that on.
Well,
for
your
sure.
response times, given all the energy and effort around parking and connector, and I think we need to, Chief, probably trend the response times in some way, shape or form at some point, because that's the question on everybody's mind. What's happening to our response times, whether it's police or fire or EMS or whatever it is. So I don't know if there's a way to trend it as we move forward or just track it to make sure we're not having an effect on our response times, either based on the connector or day of the week or whatever is happening.
Yeah, so that's something that we can definitely track. We can pull that, the analytics from the last, however many years you want. So we can definitely start tracking that as
Okay.
well. We'll make a note of that and start tracking that for future meetings.
And Jason, to add to that, I mean, maybe a broader concern that we don't always have an ambulance here, right? It's
Right.
getting Charleston EMS over here.
Correct.
Our response times might be wonderful, but if the ambulance can't get across this lovely striped connector to assist with you, I don't know how we can look at that, but I think that's where a lot of the residential concern is.
Yeah, so, and we can track that information as well. Charleston County EMS provides all of that information to us via our reporting system. So we can start tracking that information
Okay.
out. We'll make a note of that to try and start
That's,
including that
that's
information.
where if you can go back and look at Philip's comments, what's the delta in response time as a consequence of change on the connector potentially?
Correct. And I would say that, that's twofold because Charleston County EMS, they have Delta units where they stage those, but they're not transport units. So if you're having a stroke, it really does you no good to have a Delta unit. You really need a transport unit. So starting to drill down into that information is really imperative that we get that accurate data
Good.
and track it. So any other comments, questions, or concerns?
Nope, thank you.
All right, thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Very nice.
while they're transitioning, I did want to say, we have asked Charleston County EMS if they had any significant delays as a result of the striping, not just beach traffic in
Yeah.
general, but striping. That's an abnormal response that they notify us. They'll let us know so that we can stay on top of that.
Yeah.
And I still have weekly conversations with the traffic engineer from SCDOT, specifically talking about those issues on the connector. So that they're kind of monitoring it through us, and then they're monitoring it through their equipment that they have as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Captain Swain.
I know that I'm last, so I'm going to be very brief here. Congrats again to the fire department for their safety award, but the police department also got an award that I'd like to share with you guys. If you haven't already heard, the South Carolina Department of Public Safety Law Enforcement Network recognized the Isle of Palms Police Department as the 2020 DUI Agency of the Year. And that's quite an honor. That's for agencies sized 11 to 25 officers. So that's a statewide award that we earned as a department for the year 2020. We had 71 actual DUI arrests in 2020, but that's not the only qualifier. We did a lot of education awareness and social media, that kind of stuff as well too. So I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of
Outstanding.
that.
I was actually going to bring that up, and Councilman Streetman stole the thunder from the full council meeting. I was told to kind of hold that, and then bam. But no, that is outstanding. I think on behalf of all of us, congratulations. On behalf of the community.
Right. Also, during the month of April, the Isle of Palms Police Department continued to enforce the City of Isle of Palms emergency ordinances and South Carolina executive ordinances in response to COVID-19. Much of that was in the form of business spot checks, that type of thing. Just incidents of interest in April included 8 drug charges that the department made, an additional 6 DUI charges just in April alone. So that trend is still continuing. That brings us up to, for DUIs, I believe we're up to about 12 for the year 2020. I want to get that number for you. Of course, it's not right here in front of me. There it is. We're actually up to 21 for the year so far. So that trend is still continuing from that award. Those are good numbers. Also 833 parking citations in the month of April, which is quite a big jump, especially if you look at April of last year when COVID was going on. We only had approximately 72 issued for the month of April. So I think that the numbers you're seeing now, everything's really up. Incident reports, traffic stops, even collisions. There were 12 so far in the month of April for traffic collisions. Arrests are all up. Violations in general are up, but I think the numbers are typical for what you would see this time of year as the season, a normal type of season would start. And then lastly, one point of note here that since we were talking about coyotes earlier, I think the chief might have hit on this number, but we do still track the coyote sightings as they come in. There used to be a website, Better IOP, but that one's not working. That was done by a private entity. That's not working anymore. So we're doing our own tracking there. We've recorded 12 reports so far of sightings in the month of April, which is way up from the 1 or 2 that we had this time last year.
Clustered in certain areas, or are they fairly?
25th.
Most of it actually was right around where the ones were caught
24th,
recently, I believe.
25th.
Yes, correct. But other than those statistics, if you have any questions, I'd like to answer those for you now, but that's all we really have.
I appreciate the reports are thorough, and I got to say, in my 4th year, boy, these reports are a lot nicer than those big packets of things that nobody read.
Yeah.
Thank you both very much.
Sure.
Just for education purposes, what kind of incidents are we talking about?
Yes, well, I can tell you just now by looking over here at the right side, where it breaks down marijuana is 7 of those 8. I believe there was an arrest made for one traffic stop that had some like LSD and some meth and stuff in a car, which would make up the 8th one. But the majority of those are marijuana.
It was marijuana less than 1
And then we're
ounce.
talking about
Yeah.
simple type
Yeah.
possession case. Yes, that's right. Mhm. You're welcome.
Any other questions, council members? No. Well, let's talk about next meeting date as Thursday, June 3rd. have to look at a calendar. We pushed, Desiree, we pushed the personnel meeting to the following week. If other council members are agreeable, I'd like to try to do the same thing here. There's a likelihood, well, more than a likelihood, I'm going to be out of town that week. Every once in a while, I've got to go visit family at least once a year,
So the 10th,
or whatever Desiree has that will work on her calendar that works with the two of you.
The 10th's fine. If you all want to keep it at the same day, just the following
Works
week.
for me. Jimmy, you okay with it?
So the 10th at 3.
It's one or the other in this room.
Yeah.
All right, we'll change that in the calendar.
Okay, well, the only thing remaining is motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
second.
Second, third. All in favor? Aye.
Yeah, maybe I'll warm up.